If you're a business owner or senior manager, you probably had more than enough about all the wonderful opportunities awaiting you in the era of digitalization.
Whether it is big data, cloud, data science, or whatever buzzword is currently trendy.
If you would like to hear someone dissecting these claims and showing you what it actually takes to improve business processes, you're in the right place.
This is Between Data and Risk, where we discuss real-life examples of what works and what doesn't in the world of business operations.
Hi, I'm your friendly neighborhood data guy, Dr. Marian Siwiak, and with me is my co-host, Artur Cognition Shared Solutions Chief Risk and Strategy Officer.
Hello.
Welcome to the fourth episode of Between Data and Risk. Today, we'll be talking about ego-related risk in business.
I think a good place to start would be titles. And actually, we have been contacted by our listeners that I have been mispronouncing your unofficial title. Instead of friendly neighborhood data guy, I did say neighborhood friendly data guy. I promise to get my comic references correct from now on. So, to all those who pointed it out, may the force be with you, as Captain Picard said to Batman. And, corporate titles. There are some weird ones out there. I have few examples which I can share with you. For example, Head Unicorn Wrangler or Emperor of Bitland. By the way, those two are for CTOs. Or from Yahoo, still exists. The Chief Information Security Officer has apparently, according to this article, an unofficial title of Paranoid in Chief, which
is meaningful. I like it. I personally like it.
It is meaningful, but how it actually relates to ego. Having these corporate titles is in some circles it's viewed as breaking with the corporate tedium. Give yourself funny titles, have a new modern corporate culture. But in some cases, it can be a risk of overinflating certain egos when the accountability is seen as following the title, not the title following the accountability.
But what is the accountability of Chief Unicorn Wrangler? I'm trying to guess.
If you that's maybe a bit whimsical, but if you're the Emperor of Bitland or the technology guru, if it's used for whimsical purposes, it's fine. But if you start thinking that if you have a title of technology guru, you must be treated as a guru and your word is holy on all things technical, that when it becomes a bit problematic, right?
If I may, I see a bit different risk, which maybe let's move a bit from the titles themselves, but the title is there to, as you mentioned, show your accountability. Your role, especially in a big organization, is to enable others communicate with you. You don't need to be highly titled to feel highly entitled, if you know what I mean. I would like to focus maybe more on what are the risks of overinflated egos in the working place, and on the other hand, can we really turn us into perfectly polished cogs, like we have in our logo, which turn X times when some other turns Y times. People are running from this tedium for a reason, and maybe not only for a selfish reason of feeling human, which is, I don't understand why, but some people have that, but just to remain sane and productive and have some connection to the work. It's hard to feel personally like deeply connected to something that 6,400 people in your working place have the same title, same job description.
I'll give you a perfect example. My first job ever, I was working for anyone who looks up my CV on LinkedIn will know. So I won't even hide. I was working for Barclays as IT, and we had a team. I was an IT developer in a team, a junior developer, and we had a pretty good working team, and we didn't pretty much care about titles except one guy. uh, he had a PhD, so you can relate. He wasn't the only PhD in the team. He wasn't the oldest PhD or even the most experienced. He was the only one who insisted on being called doctor. Even in informal settings, he was doctor.
Hello,
I won't
I'm
mention
the
his name.
doctor.
Yeah,
Dr.
he was
Who?
Doctor Ted. Yeah,
Dr. Ted, not Doctor Who.
yeah. He was Doctor Ted. Let's call him Ted.
Mhm.
Wasn't his name, but so he wasn't just Ted. He wasn't Teddy. Hello, he was Doctor Ted, and he insisted on it. That to me doesn't spell out a healthy ego, right? Now, uh, if someone comes up to me and says, "Yeah, hello, I'm Ted, but from now on call me the Emperor of Bitland." Yeah, weird, funny, maybe slightly. But if a different example, someone comes up to you, team introduces you as a new employee, and everyone says, "Okay, yeah, I'm Jane, I'm Ted, I'm Bobby. Oh, and this is Zeke, and Zeke, everyone calls him Emperor of Bitland." Perfectly healthy, I think. This is the kind of
The given.
camaraderie that that
It's a
that, that
given.
builds. The risk that comes with this, and why I mentioned Dr. Ted. uh, the risk that comes with overinflated egos in business process is the blindness to any problems that come, that may deter you from the preconceived kind of strategy, path, process, or whatever. If you think you are right and you think you must be right, and here we'll talk about two different kinds of blinds, then you will be blind to problems that come your way. And the two kinds of blindness that I would differentiate is the kind of subconscious blindness and the absolutely conscious blindness. uh, One is, I'm the Emperor of Bitland, so I must be right. Everything that's it's a form of confirmation bias. Everything that says I'm wrong must be wrong itself, so I'll just ignore it. But there's a second kind of, all I wouldn't call maybe conscious blindness, almost conscious blindness, is I am accountable for this process. Therefore, I must ignore everything that is wrong with it because I have to be seen to be right. And it's summarized very nicely in this. I actually don't know where this phrase comes from, but I love this phrase. It doesn't matter whether you're right or wrong as long as you're consistent.
All right.
uh, it's I think it was Terry Pratchett who wrote this, right? So it's this kind of mentality. It doesn't matter whether I'm right or wrong as long as I'm consistent. uh,
But
that's a great risk in business, I think, and it comes from ego.
does it come from ego, or does it more often come from fear of, like, imposter syndrome, and I would say lack of self-confidence? I'm trying to be consistent, to be seen strong, and to be well oriented because I made my decisions and I stick to them, whatever, and I have an imposter syndrome. And if I would show any sign of weakness, they will eat me alive. They will recognize that I'm not, as good as maybe they think, or I would like them to think that they are, that I am. I think with semi-conscious blindness and this sticking to, because from my experience in cognition shared solutions, when we were working with processes, when we were as you know, our trilateral process is connecting process flow with data and risk, and introducing the risk was the breaking point. Like when we started with just doing data science as our company started, people were not
Not
using
breaking point, a breakthrough point.
breakthrough point. Absolutely, I'm so sorry. So the breakthrough point. So we started as a data science company. We were preparing some models which were supposed to help in some general processes like predictors for, I don't know, demand forecasting, or different kinds of predictions. And sometime later we were checking up with clients, and they were saying that they are not really using it. So we started to add it to actual processes, trying to identify where in the process this model should be really used, and help companies uh, put these models and the results in front of the right people. And it still didn't work as well as it should. And in the end, adding the risk layer was the breakthrough point, where the people started to understand, okay, I cannot justify my decision only by saying I did the same thing 20, 30, 50 times over last 10, 20, 50 years. They had to own up the decision with the understanding what are the risks of making decision, what are the risk appetites, and what are the quantified consequences of decision, even if this decision is lack of one, seemingly like, okay, let's roll as we used to do. So
Hmm.
uh, not changing your decision is not a sign, because ego in my mind is, it may be a healthy thing. I believe ego can be a healthy thing. So I'm really waiting for you to show me that it's not. Because if you have ego, you have the need to do stuff to your best ability, to confirm this ego to yourself. It's not like, the external validation. I think it's a, I see the problem of external validation, the need of external validation, as a far greater risk. You try to be conformistic, if there is such a word.
No, but that's not ego. See, the problem is, having an ego is a good thing because it gives you a certain confidence, and any psychologist will tell you having an ego is a good thing. Having an overinflated ego, having overconfidence is something completely different.
It's
I
called
think what you
arrogance,
mentioned is,
isn't it?
yeah, something like that. What you mentioned, having the confidence in your own abilities is good when it's coupled with a certain humbleness. uh, that you may be wrong, questioning yourself. You may be confident on the outside. On the inside, you have to question your assumptions. We talked in, I think, in episode 2 about questioning your assumptions, and I think it's a very healthy thing. It's not a sign of having a weak mind or weak ego when you question your own assumptions. Everything in moderation, obviously. But the thing is, when you allow your ego to overrule any doubts you have about your decisions, and cause it to flash away, almost ignore any signs that your decisions may be wrong. Your decisions are right because they are not because they're supported by data. It's because they're done by you. That becomes a problem. And
My
in
question,
terms of in
I
terms
think,
of
I'm sorry. I think it's true, and it's obviously true. We're bordering the truism here, just to make it a bit maybe more interesting to our listeners. Like, how would you differentiate these two, but not only in yourself but in your team? How do you distinguish between a strong leader, someone that makes up his mind, and until he's proven wrong, he's driving some vision, from someone who is driving a vision because it's his own, and he's not deviating, not because he didn't encounter sufficient data to change his mind, but because incapable of accepting new data points, changing the previous assumptions, which should lead to change in actions.
I think your question is stated in a very interesting way, and there is a hidden assumption inside it. It's that a good leader is someone who a strong leader is someone who drives their vision until it's proven wrong. I think that's. I think a good leader is someone. There are books and books written on leadership, and there are lots of theories. To me, a good leader is someone who can absorb feedback about their decisions, their leadership, their
Absolutely.
vision. Uh,
And this is the data that I
uh,
mentioned that can change his vision. This is exactly the.
uh,
I'm not denying it. I'm just saying that unless there is sufficient data to change his vision, he should stick to it, not change it depending on to whom he's talking. So different vision for your
yeah,
manager, different for.
consistency,
It doesn't matter if
but
I'm right or wrong.
be
That's fine.
consistent. No, but this is we're I think we can agree that the first part is not that consistency is wrong. Consistency is absolutely right. It's the being right or wrong, regardless, right?
So
Is that
let me
the
rephrase.
problem?
I don't have an assumption that strong leader is someone who is driving his vision no matter what. What I'm saying, he's driving his vision until proven wrong, and being proven wrong, a readiness to accept the feedback, to constantly monitor the progress, monitor the results that he's getting. It's all inside. Okay, I just maybe oversimplified it, but that's what I meant. You have a leader; he needs to have a vision. He needs to believe in it,
Mhm.
and he needs to be able to. Now we have all these books about how to incite the excitement in the people. What's the difference between leader who is leading from up front, from a manager who is slave driving from the back, yada yada yada. But the question is, you have a guy and people are complaining, yeah, this guy is really driving his vision. He wants his vision uh, to be seen through. And how do you differentiate from complaints of people who just want to be left alone, and the guy who is wanting to change something and actually has a vision is not very comfortable to be around when they have very small complacency spheres and they want them to actually move from the actual justified complaint. This guy is driving everybody crazy because he tries to prove his point and make us do things his way. Maybe even his way is not better or worse, it's just his, and everybody needs to jump as he says. How do you differentiate
I
that?
I think you don't differentiate, but because there's something that you're missing here. One is the one thing that you're missing is that a person who tries to drive their vision through, regardless of what their motivation, if they're unable to get the buy-in, the support, if they're just driving their vision without actually making people warm up to their vision, they're equally
There are
as bad. It doesn't matter what their motivation is.
I don't
A good
believe.
leader is someone who can get support.
No, but not from everybody. And there will be different people complaining to different changes, because I've seen
Then
in both my, let's say, professional and consulting careers, people who were just resistant to change. They were just this way. They just wanted to be left alone. They did their way. Again, this is another interesting thing. I have my way. I've been doing it for 10, 22 years. And I will not change no matter what, unless some CEO will come and then I will tell him that I will change, and I won't. I will boycott everything. So I don't agree that a good leader is the one who can get everybody on board. No, some people are unboardable, so to speak.
Well, then I have have some advice for the person who actually has the vision, and tying into our previous episode when we spoke to Yu Chen Chan about entrepreneurs, and we kind of touched on the correct mindset or personality of entrepreneur. That person should get their own business, because if they have the vision, if they have the drive to actually, and the ability behind it to get things done a certain way, and that way is exciting and new, that they should start their own business. They should be an entrepreneur. They shouldn't be
You
using
want to
the
tell me that in a big corporations, people who have vision and drive and want to change something, they have nothing to look for. That's a big
no, not
that's a big
no,
if.
that's not exactly what I said. If the person is finding that they cannot that they live they work in a structure, in a culture which is that kind of solidified, then they should
I
probably
I
start their own business.
this time I didn't say that the culture and that the culture is solidified. I just told you that there will be people, most likely, who will be complaining. Some of them rightfully, some
But
of them
that's a
wrongfully.
truism.
Yes, and the question is, how do you differentiate the situation where the leader is trying to drive the necessary change and there are obstructionists complaining about him, and you have a leader who is driving his vision, let's say, driven by ego, not by business need or whatever else, and you have complaints from people who are resisting to this change, not because they are obstructionist, but because they see that the vision they are
and
uh,
and from which vantage point are you considering this? Are you the
manager.
manager
Yes,
of that
yes,
visionary?
yes, you are manager of the vision. You ask the person, please
Then
change.
it should be perfectly simple. You ask about the that person about the support for the supporting data, the supporting information, and if you see if there are indeed red flags that you see either from that person or from the person, from the people who are complaining, you can make up your own mind. I'm sure people have the ability to make up their own mind. They don't have to, if someone comes up to me, in my last few years as a CRO, if someone came to me and said there is a problem, uh, sometimes it was a problem, sometimes it wasn't a problem, and they just wanted to make it a problem. I gathered the data, I looked at the problem, and I decided whether it was a problem or not. Because I was accountable for it, I had to make that decision. If I was not able to make that distinction, then I wouldn't be doing my job.
Okay, this answers my question. So look at the data. I think we had a whole
Yeah,
episode on
you're
look at
you're
the
the
data.
data guy.
Uh, so
Listen to what data is telling you. Didn't we say that in the first episode?
I'm not sure. I can't remember really. Let's so you think that there is a connection between data and evaluation of ego inflation level, so to speak. Actually, we should think of ego
there
inflation
is there w-
index.
there were concepts that I encountered before. Egoless driving was a concept which was developed as a proposal, kind of a school of thought, that when you drive, you should leave your ego kind of in the back seat, to avoid road rage, to avoid forcing your priority onto others. It's a good concept. It's very hard, obviously. It's easier said than done, but it's a good concept. On a completely different front, there was a concept of egoless programming. I used to be a developer, and I was actually given a workshop on egoless programming, how to uh, write code in such a way that you don't tie your sense of well-being and your sense of personal value with the code that you're writing. And if someone is finding bugs in your code, it doesn't reflect on you as a person, doesn't diminish your worth. They're just doing their job as a tester. They're finding bugs, you fix them. So
I think
why not have
I think I heard.
egoless managing, egoless process design, where you know you're a person, leave your ego kind of in the corner in your office, manage the processes within your company. They're not going to be perfect, just acknowledge it. If there are problems, fix them. don't let your ego overrule. Oh no, there are no problems. I'm right. Everyone else is wrong. And egoless management should be a thing.
But absolutely, I don't. If it's a repeatable process like coding, then you can do different things with it.
Oh, you're
Like
treading on thin ice here, my friend.
I do consciously. I love the sound of cracking. Uh, otherwise you wouldn't be able to work in sprints. In data science, on your research, there is no working in sprints. You cannot actually, when you have creative work, you cannot put it into manageable chunks. You never know what's behind the next corner. But let's jokes aside. Um, let's focus on egoless management. Uh, if you have repeatable process, not requiring really your personal involvement, you could do it, automated, and a little of bragging. I think our trailer is getting close to be ready to be used in actual business process automation, when the decisions can be evaluated in the context of the risks. We can actually automate some actual business decisions, not only the technical ones, pretty obvious from the sensory readings and stuff like that. But if you have a change which needs to happen, you need to find a new way of doing stuff, or if you want really drive people and pull people behind you. I don't know how about you, but I didn't met many great leaders who didn't have this charisma coming from also their ego, their personality. You said yourself, having an ego is not a bad thing, and now you're talking about egoless, not overinflated egoless. No, egoless management. You become a soulless machine designed solely to execute some
No.
puzzles, put them all together. Where is the
Let me
pride?
explain it different. Let me explain differently. I had a manager, a great mentor of mine, who um, had a very big ego. He's, the moment you met him, you knew that this guy thought the world of himself, right? And in kind of casual conversation, it came out, and he always liked to brag about his achievements, and you know,
But he
and,
had them.
but he had achievements. He was really a very very accomplished person. He had great knowledge, but he liked to strut it. And when he came into a room, he was in the room. You could see that he was in the room. There was a difference. The way he managed, and this is why I liked working with him. The way he managed, he actually, you could see his ego going down, and he asked questions. He was not be kind of above asking even the lowest person in the room about their opinion, listening to that. Then his ego immediately jumped back up and he made a decision, and his decision was final, but not before he actually was sure that he got the inputs. And this is what I mean by egoless management. I don't mean not have an ego. Have an ego. But when you are managing,
There is a
tone
difference.
it
If
down.
you make a decision on the road, will I take over? Will I stop? Will I turn? Will I wait for the other guy to come? There is absolutely no space for ego. There is only space for uh, cold calculation of the risks, consequences, speeds, other stuff. When you are managing, in my opinion, this is something that I like to joke about myself, that I am so arrogant. I'm so arrogant, and my ego is so big that I have no problem accepting other people's greatness. I don't feel belittled by. I don't need the feel to the. I don't feel the need to belittle anyone. Anyone can give me my awesomeness, new data, which will make me even more awesome and make my decisions even awesomer. If there is such a word, I don't think there is. Uh, you see,
But
it's
that's kind of almost taking ego, like on a neutron star. If you stand on a neutron star, you'll be able to see the back of your own head, right? It's taking ego to such an extent that it becomes humbleness,
I'm not.
because it actually makes you, in a sense, it makes you humble enough to accept others people's inputs.
Yes, but this is
You accept you accept that other people may know more than you because you're so confident in your own awesomeness
exactly.
that you don't feel threatened by other people giving you
They,
better information,
abs-
better data,
that's what exactly what I am calling the ego, the healthy ego. I would
stable
say
ego.
stable ego. Yes, it's if you feel the need to belittle someone by not listening to them, because I think that ignoring people who have data, as you said, the lowest intern, he comes with the data. If you don't want to listen to him, it's a sign of troubles with your trouble with your
Self-worth.
self-worth, self-confidence. Yes. So in my opinion, if you try to uh, stigmatize ego, you lead to situations where people are frustrated and they cannot be sure of their worth, because if they show it, they are made ashamed of it. You should be egoless, you should be cold and professional, and you should be, you shouldn't think about yourself. It's now the team. I think uh, the idea behind this collaborative decision making is there shouldn't be one person making a decision or be accountable for it. Actually, the accountability is, I don't think it's solved. I think we should make an episode about it. But why one person should be responsible and accountable for it? It's like let's spread it, because it will make one person to. We don't trust people, it seems, with accountability. And I think this is becoming a problem. Like, everybody is supposed to just be quiet, sit down, and do their work. But from our, let's say, split of business processes, the processes are split to decisions and actions, and somebody needs to make a decision. They need to take some factors into account, take some risk, and it requires some certain level of trust into their abilities and into their themselves, so they don't try to fuzzy the accountability and responsibility, because this is what is driving. I don't know, I can't remember, 70%, 80% of people said that working from home is better because they have fewer meaningless meetings and they can focus on work. And the reason for these meetings is people trying to distribute the responsibility. Let's not make a decision. Let's not see anyone me making a decision, because I will be perceived as having an ego. But no, we will now, uh, you know, talk about it forever and forever.
This is why I think labels are not very good, because yeah, if you just take the label egoless management, it may be interpreted as such. But if you tone down your ego a bit and actually listen to the
Or up,
content,
or
uh,
up.
or up, as the case may be, uh, uh, you know uh, you should be confident in your own ability enough to accept that what if other people give you advice, corrections, feedback, it doesn't diminish your self-worth. And you know in our, you mentioned our three layer process, right? In our three layer process, we put a lot of stress on accountability always, and accountability should be given to a person or team, obviously, because it can be, it's not in the
account
sense of
account
spreading it,
Accountability to a
uh,
team.
in a sense that yes, you're right. There are layers of it.
Responsibility,
Let
yes.
let's yeah. Uh, let's leave that for
Episode.
another time. But there are times where you give that more correctly responsibility to a person or a team. But that obviously means putting trust in that team, in that person, that they will be able to make the right decision. But we also put a lot of emphasis on making sure that people not only know their bit in the process, but they also know how their bit impacts the whole. What is their place in the whole process, in the big scheme of things, so that they can get this feeling of worth. What they do actually matters, and secondly, as a sense of achievement. Even if you are only screwing in this tiny screw in a machine, if you don't do it, the machine is going to fall over. It's going to fall apart at
which
the end of the process. You may be a small cog in the process, but without that cog, that machine will not work.
which reminds me a story. Some furniture producer, he orders some hinges from China. They were for some fancy furniture, and he got like a full container of them. The hinges were small, so you can imagine there were like a lot of hinges in the container. And when he tried to install them, the doors were not closing. There was there was a problem with hinges. He actually flew to China. It was, of course, before 2019, and he went to the factory. And the whole process was right, but in the end, there was a lady who was supposed to make a little groove in the hinge. And he looked at her, and he saw that she's doing it with a different tool that she was told. And he asked, "Why are you doing it with this tool? We provided you with a specialized tool which makes the groove exactly the size and shape it should be." I said, "Oh, but it's uncomfortable. I prefer this one." Uh, but
Well, apart from it being a clear example of insubordination, it does illustrate the point that if you don't understand your function in the process, then you're bound to make mistakes because you're not aware what it actually means in the grand scheme of things, right?
and also it shows that people irrelevant, they want to be able to adjust their work. To do it safely, we need to give them this space of understanding of what is expected in the end. uh, not just the egoless management of assigning them tasks. Again, I believe that if you have your ego healthily driven, and you are willing to accept other people's greatness because they do not, you don't feel threatened by it, you're much better understanding and motivating them, explaining them what needs to be done. You don't expect them also to blindly follow the directions, because directions can be sometimes, as we said previously, uh, you should mm, check your assumptions from time to time. You can't do this if you believe that following blindly mm, the tasks that you've been given is something which is right. If you know what I mean.
Absolutely, and this is where the three layer, the combination of process, data, and risk comes in. Because if you give people a process to follow, they you turn them into drones, right? If you support that with the correct data and give them an envelope of risk within which they can operate, what you actually stimulating is innovation, because you are giving them a space to operate, and you say this is a safe space within this risk envelope. Optimize, suggest, whatever, based on the data, based on your goal, which is your role in the process. but within this space, you should be free to innovate and adjust.
I will point that if you give somebody a space to innovate, you give them a big room and say, okay, that we bring in the package from exit A, entrance A, and we expect this package to be, I don't know, wrapped up in exit B. Uh, if you want them to innovate, you need to strike their ego. They need to grow, to do things differently. This is what, for me, ego means: is I am good enough to make things even better. If you try to strip them of ego, you will have this package done every time the same. So that's why I said maybe egoless management is a good for completely repeatable and already optimized jobs. But I believe such management is prone to be replaced with business process automation. Uh, but feel free to disagree, of course.
I think you're stuck on this label. What I meant by egoless management, I gave you the example of my mentor, right?
No,
He was
absolutely,
able to
but he
tone
wasn't
down his
egoless.
ego.
He wasn't egoless. He had ego. His ego
The
allowed
moment
him to
the
feel.
moment he was managing, he was egoless because he allowed himself to be corrected. He allowed himself to be
You
given new data.
But
This is
you now put the equal sign between ego and being an arrogant beep, which is not true. You said there is an ego, an oversized ego. An ego is healthy, and now you say that any ego means your inability to accept input, your inability to respect people, your inability
okay.
to listen to
Over
them. S-
Oh, you're definitely onto me to today to try to prove that I'm wrong and you're right. Your overinflated ego is
No,
running wild.
I'm just trying. I'm just trying to keep our definitions straight. I'm a data guy. You put a
Ab-
definition
Absolutely,
to ego, and now you are using completely
and I
different
agree with
definition.
you. Over, I what I mean is overinflated ego. Yes,
Overinflated ego.
overinflated ego, bad. Having an ego, having a sense of your self worth, of your own awesomeness is good because it's a creative force. It's the difference about the creative and destructive force.
I
You
totally
know,
agree.
if your ego is a creative force, then it's absolutely good. If it starts becoming destructive because it prevents you from seeing red flags that are appearing, from accepting criticism or feedback,
Or
then
data.
it becomes a destructive
I think
force. Yeah.
what you said, like when you don't let even data convince you that you should change anything, uh, it's uh, it's uh, it's absolute danger.
Mhm.
Uh,
I think we arrived at a kind of natural convergence where we can agree that this is uh, but just to maybe put this into a certain perspective where before we finish. So how do you in a process you let's say we go to a client company, we look at their process and uh, how do we adjust for ego in a process?
well, we draw the map around decisions, and you learn what people feel responsible for, what decisions, what people feel that the data that they need is input from other people, from their team, because it's also a data source in on the process map. uh, you can pretty easily, let's say, during drawing the process map, like the overinflated ego decisions, they usually have in the first iteration very little incoming data sources. This is for me the red flag. If somebody says, oh, I make a decision, okay, so what is the data that you use? I don't use data.
Mhm.
or yeah, I get this report, from my, I read it, and I'm done. If somebody has multiple decision points where they have little to no input data, these are most likely to be ego driven decisions. If somebody is flooding us with, okay, I check this, I check that, I check that, sometimes it's deep insecurity, and it also needs to be, sometimes these decisions are blocked because of overflow of different inputs that this person requires to make any decision.
Yeah, analysis paralysis, right?
Yes, exactly. But it's also pretty easily distinguishable. Like we support change management. We don't, let's say, do change management, but we support our clients in because I don't believe it can be done personally. I don't believe it can be done from outside. But anyway, we can tell them, the managers, okay, here are decisions which will be made. We can provide them with the best data. We can provide them with, I don't know, dashboards or predictive models or reports or whatnots, and it will be ignored. When we can tell it from the start, this person does not want data to be available because they already know better. It's like, I used to joke, but I will sell my Encyclopedia Britannica. I got married, and my wife knows better anyway. uh, so this is pretty surprisingly the tool which is supposed to objectively map up processes and just check the very process of mapping shows you exactly who is who is who. Also, if you see that there is a person with whom people, you can see if subordinates confirm every decision with their boss. It also tells you a lot about the structure of company and ego of and trust put in the team. So the first iteration of the map, the one that we built on the basis of the interviews with at different layers of org chart, tells you an awful lot about the culture, about the ego of different managers. If the funniest thing is when you have decision and you have like two, three different people responsible for it, and you have, let's say, one guy feeling responsible but not accountable for multiple decisions which are actually in other people's processes, it tells you a lot about this person. There is, as I said,
Mhm.
awful lot you can derive from the maps about the egos, and overinflated egos and healthy egos. Uh, Now we sound like we try to sell it, don't we?
Well, not really, and but I think it's very true, and the way we usually do it, through interviews, and it's the superposition of the results of different interviews on top of one another. When you look at how a decision can have many masters, almost like a cat can the story that there was a cat found, and people were asking who owns it, and half the families on the street said it's their cat and their
Because they
people.
feed it.
So, yeah, so it's like, who owns this decision, and then half the hands in the room shoot up because the people think that they are the ones making the decision. uh, so it's kind of similarity. uh,
And exactly
but
exactly opposite is when you act who is accountable for the decision. But
yeah.
the hands go down with clap on the knee so loud that it's deafening. Like, so okay, you're all responsible. Who is accountable?
But I would also add another thing, that not only that the data sources are a good kind of telltale sign of whether someone is making a decision based on the inputs or on their ego, but also feedback loops. You mentioned, whether they confirm the decision, but the question is what they're actually confirming, whether they confirm that whether the decision is right, or whether they confirm the results of their decision. Because uh,
It's a
if
subset of
if
the
you
data.
build it into
I,
if
co-
you
I
build
consider
it
the
into a
subset data.
feedback loop,
Hmm.
It is, but it's a very special and I think very precious piece of data.
Absolutely.
Actually, yes, make a decision, implement it, but then ask for results and correct your process. Feedback loops. There's a whole section that we always do on feedback loops, and I think it's worth mentioning.
Absolutely, and it drives us back to our one of our favorite topics, meaning select your measurements, not only your targets, because your feedback loops are
Mm.
your measure points,
Metrics.
metrics. Sorry, your metrics. We need like a separate topic, the podcast just about metrics and targets. Mm, so just to conclude, there are different types of egos. An ego is a good thing. Uh, the ego, or an overinflated ego, maybe not so much. Uh, you can nurture ego into a creative force. Um, you should be able to distinguish between the two by looking at data and looking at feedback from team members, from peers, from the results themselves. Um, do we have any more like conclusions?
Programming is not a repetitive activity.
Uh, isn't it? Uh,
Yes, so I think that's all we have time for now. Before you insult another one of my past jobs. Uh, I hope this was of use to someone. Thank you for listening.
Don't miss the next episode, where we'll be talking to Ambrose Wong, the CEO of Serai, a Hong Kong financial startup launched 3 years ago under the auspices of HSBC, and which is now closing down after failing to build a commercially viable business.
Subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or visit bdr.show to find out more about future episodes and guests. You can also check out cognition.llc for more information on Cognition Shared Solutions, our services, and other events hosted by us.
For now, it's thank you from myself, your friendly neighborhood data guy, Dr. Marian Siwiak, and my co-host, Artur Guja.
Thank you.